And now that I got the best out of 2021 out of the way, let's do the fun list. The one that is both fun and yet not fun at the same time. It's fun to rip apart bad movies, but you know what? It's also a bad thing because I don't want to do that. I don't want to rip apart bad movies. I do want to do it, but I don't want to do it at the same time. It can be fun, especially for the really bad ones, but you know what? I'm doing it. I don't care. So, welcome to the worst of 2021. The worst movies of 2021, specifically. Movies that angered me, infuriated me, movies that just made me think, why did this happen? Why did these people get involved? Who produced this thing? Why would anyone think this was such a good idea? And there were plenty of movies that did that. There were way too many movies that came out last year that I honestly forgot about. I didn't care for a lot of these movies, obviously. But these are the ones that kind of just got under my skin the most, to be honest. So let's start off with my dishonorable mentions. Dishonor. Dishonor on you, dishonor on your cow, dishonor on everything, dishonor your whole family, whatever the line was. So let's get to my dishonorable mentions. Let's start off with Space Jam: A New Legacy. Now, this movie's not bad because it's made for kids or made for, it's not a bad movie because it's a kid's movie. This movie's bad because it just didn't know what it wanted to be. It kind of knew what it wanted to be. It wanted to be an HBO Max commercial. That's it. Why else would you have all these references to Warner Brothers properties? No other reason. On top of that, LeBron James is not great in this movie. Most of the actors aren't. I couldn't care about anything. The jokes didn't land. Nothing worked in this movie. It made me look back at the old Space Jam and think, maybe this isn't as bad as I remember it. At least it knows what it is. Red Notice. This was a bland, forgettable movie starring three really talented people. Dwayne Johnson, Ryan Reynolds, Gal Gadot. And yet this movie, it tries so hard to be like a 90s buddy-esque movie like Lethal Weapon or something like that. It also tries really hard to be extremely convoluted and tries to take twists and turns that just don't make sense. Nothing about that movie worked. Hitman's Wife's Bodyguard. Another movie starring Ryan Reynolds. This movie, I honestly had never seen a movie before where I just wanted all the main characters to just kill each other. And that would be the only happy ending I would have allowed for this movie. It was just obnoxious. It wasn't funny. It was just horrible. And yet somehow it's on my honorable mentions list. I have weird priorities. America the Motion Picture. This was just an unfunny tale. It's just an unfunny retelling of the, 1776, the American Revolution, and it's just not funny. There's deliberate errors in history that just don't make sense. They're not funny. Nothing is really funny in this movie, and it's sad because everyone involved in this movie is really funny. It's just this whole movie, it just wasn't funny. I just didn't laugh. The Unholy, that was another horror. That was a horror movie that came out back in April of last year. And it had an interesting concept, like what if like this holy figure was actually a demon or something they were performing all these miracles, and yet they're actually a demon. It's an interesting idea. The problem is it's just not scary. It's just not scary. It's convoluted. It's just boring at times. Like, I don't think I was scared once watching this movie. Yes Day, another movie where characters are just extremely obnoxious. I couldn't care about this family. The jokes fell flat. I just didn't care. Voyagers. This was a Lord of the Flies in space movie that honestly doesn't work. A lot of things in this movie just don't make sense. A lot of the characters are really flat. And that's before they get off their pills. Like, once they stop taking their pills, they're still really boring people. Nothing about this movie worked. It wasn't interesting. I forgot about this movie even as I was watching it. Tom and Jerry. Now, some people have defended this movie saying, oh, well, the Tom and Jerry stuff is really good. Yeah, the Tom and Jerry stuff is good, but it's barely in the movie. It's mostly revolves around these annoying human characters who are just not that good. They're just horrible human beings. It's just not really that funny, and even when it is funny, it's more surreally funny. Like, there's like that one scene where Tom is playing in the park with the piano, and Jerry comes in, and like Tom's pretending to be blind, and then Jerry reveals he's not blind, and they're like, "Oh, it's just a regular cat playing the piano." It's like a regular cat playing the piano. Okay, it's a movie that just didn't work for me. I didn't laugh that much, and even the Tom and Jerry stuff in it kind of worked at times. There was just not enough in there. It was one of those movies like Scooby-Doo, Alvin and the Chipmunks, Smurfs, Yogi Bear, like one of those movies where they take a really old cartoon, put it in modern times, and it just doesn't know like what people are really into. It's just embarrassing at times. I didn't like it. Escape Room, Tournament of Champions. I didn't like the first Escape Room. So, and surprisingly, and I guess not surprisingly, I should say, I like this one a lot less. This movie was not interesting. This movie was not scary. Only a couple of the characters I kind of liked. A couple of the new characters, like the former priest and the girl who can't feel pain, were interesting. But the influencer and the guy whose wife, who has a wife whose birthday is that day, they were boring. Nothing about them were interesting. The twist is just so convoluted. It just was not interesting. It was just boring to me. I hated it. I really didn't like this movie. The Forever Purge. Stop. Just stop with these movies. Just for the love of God, just stop making Purge movies. I don't think I can take it anymore. The characters are flatter than ever. The stakes are unbelievably insane. It's just... And also, because this movie was also supposed to be released in 2020, I don't think I've ever seen a movie that had such bad timing in a long time. It's like, this movie was clearly made to be released in 2020, given some things that happened in this country in 2020. So, yeah, they kind of missed an opportunity on that. Now this movie comes out and it's just incredibly dated. It just didn't work. Cinderella. I didn't even review this thing. I didn't even like it. I really didn't like it. I didn't know whether it wanted to be a jukebox musical or a regular musical with brand new musical numbers. Most of the performances are bland. The humor just didn't work. James Corden's in this movie, so that's all I gotta say. Sweet Girl. This is the last dishonorable mention. I don't think anyone remembers this movie. I know I didn't remember this movie. Jason Momoa, and he has a daughter and such. And there's this whole mission thing. I don't even remember anything. I just remembered that it came out last year, and I'm like, oh, right, I saw that movie. I don't remember anything from that movie. I kind of forgot about it as I was watching it, kind of like what I said with Voyagers. It's just forgettable. It's just boring. It's just... I didn't care. I just don't care. Now let's get into my actual top 10. My 10 worst movies of 2021. At number 10, we have The Addams Family 2. Now this movie, I don't mind if a movie is made for kids. I just mind if a movie is made for kids and it's just dumb. There's way too many pop culture references. There's way too many jokes that just fall flat. And the animation's not nearly as good. The characters aren't likable. The story's crazy. A lot of jokes don't work. There's even a joke about the pandemic, which I thought was in very poor taste. And probably the worst double entendre in a movie since The Cat in the Hat. Think about that. At number 9, Snake Eyes, G.I. Joe Origins. Never have I seen an origin story so bland and boring before. Like, literally, it's just not interesting. The characters are all boring. The action is boring. They cut around a lot, and they shake the camera a lot like this. It doesn't work. It's not interesting. They're hiding. It just didn't work for me. I hated it. I felt like I was falling asleep during this movie, and that's not good. At number 8, we have She's All That. No, He's All That. I should say He's All That. That's at number 8. So the original She's All That is without a doubt not a good movie. I don't care. It's definitely dated. It definitely doesn't hold up. And so He's All That, which admittedly is kind of one of the few gender swap movies that I think could be interesting at least. It's not. It definitely is not. It does not work. The characters are all just incredibly vapid, and it just has this message about how, the important thing is not having followers, but having the one. And yet they cast the biggest person on TikTok to say that. Oh, the irony. The characters don't work. It basically just follows the original movie beat for beat, and it just didn't work. It's never funny. It's just boring. I didn't care for the romantic couple. It was just sad at times. Even a Matthew Lillard cameo can't save this movie. That's how bad this movie is. At number 7, Thunder Force. Yikes. Remember when we thought this would be the worst movie of the year? Well, we were wrong. We were so wrong. A lot of the jokes fall flat. They don't do anything interesting. I don't even remember any of the characters' names. I just remember Melissa McCarthy was in it, Octavia Spencer was in it, Jason Bateman is in it, and the only thing I remember is that he had claw hands. That's it. Oh yeah, and I guess they both like raw chicken. Like Melissa McCarthy and Jason Bateman do it. And it's just never funny. I don't think I laughed once. It was just mostly Melissa McCarthy falling over, getting hurt, and it was sad at times. I was just watching it. It's like, this is just sad to watch these talented actors just do something that's just not interesting. It doesn't really attempt to do anything interesting. And even if they claim, oh, well, we're just having fun. Well, I didn't have fun. Did you ever think of that? And this may sound bad, but so Melissa McCarthy's husband directed this movie, actually. And he's directed a bunch of movies that she starred in, like Tammy, The Boss, Life of the Party, this. And they just need to stop working together. Like, he's just not a good director. It's just, like, if you guys are happy in your marriage, I'm really glad. Just, maybe don't work with each other anymore. Okay, just, that may sound, no. Just don't work on movies together like this anymore. Just stop. At number 6, Resident Evil Welcome to Raccoon City. Another bland, boring video game movie where the characters are just incredibly dull and lifeless. The horror elements are not that scary. They cut around a lot. I couldn't care. It's like a movie that's supposed to be on a timer, and yet they have time to sit and talk for a bit. It just dragged on and on and on, and they try to set up for a sequel that will more than likely not happen. At number 5, surprisingly, only at number 5 is Dear Evan Hansen. How is this movie only number 5? Well, I saw 4 movies that were worse. Dear Evan Hansen is probably the most misguided, dangerous, tasteless movie I've seen all year, and that says a lot. It's a movie where almost none of the main characters are likable, particularly Evan Hansen. Doesn't help the fact that he's a 27-year-old playing a high school kid. That definitely doesn't help. And again, and also the musical numbers aren't really that good. The characters are just awful to each other. And I just thought it basically was 13 Reasons Why the musical. It takes so many complicated things to talk about and just trivializes all of them. It's horrible. It's really, really bad. And even though, like, there are a couple performances that save this movie, mainly Caitlin Dever, Amanda Stenberg, and Amy Adams, no one else saves this movie. Ben Platt doesn't save this movie. Julianne Moore doesn't save this movie. No one saves this movie. This movie was awful. This movie was really, really awful. I hated every second of it. Don't watch this movie. At number 4, we have Breaking News in Yubba County. Chances are you didn't even hear of this movie. Well, I watched it all the way back in February. This movie has Allison Janney, Mila Kunis, Awkwafina, Regina Hall, and oh my god, I mean, I love dark comedies, but this movie is so dark, I couldn't even laugh. It wasn't even that funny. Like, most of the stuff it's just there. It's not even, like, there for a good reason. It's just there to be dark and unsettling. It's not even that funny. I just felt bad for everyone who's involved with this movie. And I'm just like, what were they thinking during this? Like, nothing in this movie makes any sense. I didn't laugh. And, like, even the themes that they were talking about, they didn't land. Nothing about this movie worked. Don't look up this movie. Don't watch it. It's just horrible. It's one of the most in poor taste movies I've seen in a long time. And yes, I sat through Dear Evan Hansen, for crying out loud. At number 3 is Infinite. This movie is basically a ripoff of a lot of really good movies. And here's a movie that basically steals just the bare minimum for this. It's just a boring, bland, horribly made movie that nothing works. Like, none of the characters are interesting. Mark Wahlberg's pretty boring in this movie. The direction from Anton Fuqua is not even that impressive. It's just kind of dull. It's just... This movie was supposed to come out in theaters, and then they were like, no, we're going to put this out on Paramount Plus for no extra cost. They knew. They knew what they were doing. It was just... It was just boring. It was bad. Don't watch Infinite. At number 2, Home Sweet Home Alone. How is this movie only number 2? Well, I saw a movie that was worse. I already did that joke. Well, then again, Home Sweet Home Alone just did this movie again. It just did Home Alone again. It just doesn't work. Nothing about this movie works. The kid is an asshole. They make you sympathize for the burglars, and they're not really burglars. It's all just a misunderstanding. And none of the jokes work. The kid actually steals from a church at one point. Yeah, that's our hero, ladies and gentlemen. A kid who steals from a church. And also, again, you just feel bad for these people who are just caught in this kid's traps. Like, they're just trying to save their house, for crying out loud. They're not just like petty burglars who are doing this just for fun. No, these are people who actually need a place to stay. And yet, here's a movie where this kid just tortures them. It's just torture. It's just so unfunny. It's sadistic at times. And this movie has the balls to make a joke about how remakes are terrible in a terrible remake. Think about that for a minute. It's just horrible. It's just bad. I hated Home Sweet Home Alone, and admittedly, I'm not a big fan of any of the Home Alone sequels, even 2, to be honest. But this movie is so bad that I'm just like, just stop. Just stop trying to remake Home Alone in any way possible. Home Alone was lightning in a bottle, and you can't capture lightning in a bottle twice. They've tried 5 times now. Stop. And at number 1, the worst movie of 2021 was Music. Music. Oh my god, Music. Music, the movie that made Simple Jack look subtle. Music, the movie that I thought we would never see ever again. It's a movie that is so shocking and bad that its Golden Globe nominations aren't even the worst thing about it. It's a movie where an able-bodied actress plays this girl with Down syndrome. And it's just horrible. Her performance is just awful. Everyone in this movie is just horrible. The musical numbers don't add anything. It throws in every cliche possible. It's just an atrocious nightmare of a movie. And chances are, people forgot about this movie. I couldn't forget about this movie. I couldn't forget the fact that I paid to watch this movie. I can't forget the fact that I paid for this and now feel bad about that every day. I can't forget anything that happened in this movie. It has... I hated Music. I really hated Music so much. It was just... like that joke in Tropic Thunder. It was, how Ben Stiller did that movie that was making fun of I Am Sam. But this movie didn't learn from that. It is shocking. It is appalling. It is offensive. It is the worst movie I saw in 2021. I said in my review, if that's not the worst movie of 2021, I would be surprised. Well, they had a lot of competition, but there's no way it was topped. There was no way it could be beaten. Music was the worst movie of 2021. I hope to God you did not see it. So, that was my list of the worst movies of 2021. What are some of the worst movies of 2021 to you? Comment down below. Subscribe to the channel. This is Pat. Stay safe.